Welcome to the Real Triathlon Podcast. I'm your host, Garrick Lowen, here with Nicholas Chase and Jackson Lund.
So, Nick, when is the last time you did a podcast?
You got to open it up differently than that.
Oh, okay. So, everyone, welcome to another edition of, the Stupid Questions Podcast and the... Are we branding this?
This is the Stupid Questions Podcast.
Okay, welcome to the Stupid Questions Podcast. Today on the pod, we're going to be having myself and Nicholas Chase, my coach for the last 9 months now. He came down to visit straight from Michigan to here in La Follette, Tennessee, on his way down to, what race are we doing this weekend?
Ironman Chattanooga.
Ironman Chattanooga. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great.
Yeah?
It's been nice to be here with you because how often do we ever get time to just hang out one-on-one in kind of in the middle of nowhere-ish? I mean, we're still have to drive to Walmart 30 minutes or so. So we're kind of out, you're out there.
Yeah.
But the swimming around here has been exceptional. As you can see behind us, we've got a beautiful backdrop. We're swimming in that pretty much, I think we swim every day. Has there been a day we didn't swim?
The only day I didn't swim, I paddleboarded instead, was Saturday. But I think you've swum every day.
Every day, trying to get that open water feel. But yeah, it's been exceptional. Seth put this together. He invited me out. He invited more than me out, but no one else came.
No one else came. No one else cared.
They cared. They were just too busy.
Too busy. Yeah, for sure. No, yeah, it's been good. La Follette, Tennessee, it is definitely a small town feel, but I don't know if you can hear, but we have some arborists going in the background, chopping trees, moving some equipment. So if you hear that.
If you hear that, we're sorry.
Yeah. So, Nick, what do you think of this part of Tennessee so far, other than obviously where you've been here?
I've never been in this part of Tennessee. I've been to Chattanooga. I've driven from wherever, like North Carolina to Chattanooga. So I've gotten to see a lot of the winding roads and how pretty it is. But I've never been here, and I can't believe how, it's a hidden gem.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really beautiful area. I really lucked out. So this is actually my family's lake house. When I say my family, it's my in-laws. But yeah, it's been really a cool opportunity just to have you out and get to know you a little bit more. And yeah, I mean, I had asked you, have you ever spent a week with somebody that you haven't physically met for the first time in person? And you're like, yeah, I do it all the time. It's a totally new experience for me. So it's been totally fun though. Yeah.
I'm pretty easy to get along with after the years of traveling and having to deal with carting my ass and all my stuff around. So and the military just shows you've got to live that way. So I think I've had a little bit more of a crash course into what it takes to integrate. But ultimately, I came here because 70.3 Michigan's a hometown or home state race. And then my parents agreed I never get to see my parents, so my parents drove me down. It was awesome. I got to spend 7 hours in the car, and anytime we talked about religion or politics, my mom and I just started arguing. So
Oh, really?
So that was nice. And then we were here, and now we're almost a weekend. When did I get here?
You got here on Wednesday evening, and it is now Monday afternoon.
So almost a week, and just relentless hills. You can't run on anything flat. We've had to try to find some relatively not hilly stuff, but all in all,
it's hard to come by.
It's been good.
Yeah,
this area is great, and Tennessee is beautiful country. And this lake that is behind us is massive, and so much of it just doesn't have any homes on it. I'm so impressed.
Yeah. It's pretty. It's a good kept secret of this part of Tennessee. So let me ask you some questions here. Military, was that your first legit, quote unquote, job, post high school or college? This is what I'm going to be doing?
I think so. I did some industrial roofing.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Which was weird to say that I did that, but the money was so good. I was making $900 to $1,200 a week.
What year was this?
As a 19-year-old, this was probably 2006 or something like that.
So you were feeling
maybe 2005.
I am the richest man in the world.
So I was feeling great. Had a Jeep payment, had a cell phone payment, and that's pretty much it. Just living life.
Yeah.
Had a girlfriend, so had to have some fun here and there.
Okay.
And then the first place, that roofing company that I worked for, the first roof we put on was the pizza place that I previously worked at for like 3 years. So it was really interesting how life works out that way.
Yeah.
Then I joined the military and was gone for 10 years active duty around Florida, traveling and going to Iraq a few times. And then, it was my first major, it's a corporate job at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. Who was your most favorite and unfavorite boss?
Oh, well, one of my favorite bosses was my best man at my first wedding. His name's Trav. He's the one who got me into sport, into triathlon. He would go out on these bike rides every day. He had this Cannondale Slice, and he'd have this Timex kit on.
Oh, yeah.
He was like legit. Oh, I was going to do Ironman stuff, no big deal. And then I was like just a puny kiteboard surfer, but I was still like a power lifter. I guess I wasn't puny, but either way, I was just like some little grom. I didn't have any credibility.
Yeah.
And so I traded some kiteboarding gear for this bike, and it was like this old Cannondale Slice from like 2001. It was old. And I was like, I got this bike, man. Can I go ride with you? And so he's like, yeah, we're going to go ride Suncoast Parkway on Saturday. It'll be a bunch of us who've just been doing the sport forever. So I was like, all right, I'll be there. I didn't have any clip-in pedals. I had like some Asics Nova Blast or something that was just massive. Mm-hmm. So I pedaled on, and I could not feel my area down there for a whole week.
Oh,
because the saddle just destroyed my ability to feel neurons firing down there. So I was real concerned.
Nerves, yeah.
I was real concerned, but then they're like, oh, you'll probably be all right. Just, you killed the blood flow. You probably killed something down there, but it'll come back.
Yeah.
I haven't had any kids of my own, so maybe that was what did it.
How long did it take, you say, for the feeling to come back?
It took a whole week.
Yeah, I've had that happen with one part of my groin, but only once, and that was years after.
Yeah, it was like...
That's scary, actually.
You could have just been beating the crap out of my whole package, and I wouldn't have felt it for about 6 days straight. It was terrible.
So who's your worst boss then?
So he was my best boss. I kicked their ass to that ride, and then it turned out that was it. Since that moment, I've never stopped doing triathlon.
Really?
Crazy. Not unless I was sick.
Yeah.
Worst boss, probably all the other ones.
Literally all of them.
Yeah. I don't think I mean, the military, they take care of themselves. They want you to have a family atmosphere at work because you go to gatherings and you have parties and all you do is drink and hang out when you're not working.
Yeah.
So I think maybe my worst boss, quote unquote, would have been my pizza place job. Not the manager, but the owner. He'd always come in like all coked out and just like freak out in the evening.
Actually.
You guys are just fucking up my business. Like, what is this? Like, he'd just come in and yell at us every night. Like, and we were like, sorry, dude. Like, sorry, Rod. And my dad was a police officer in Grand Blanc where I grew up. And he's like, oh yeah, Rod, he came over, he got arrested for cocaine. So
That's insane.
he was a bad boss.
Yeah. Good grief. Wow. So you jumped into triathlon for the first time after meeting this guy, your best man, Trav.
Trav. His name's Traveler.
Traveler.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, what an interesting name.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Huh. Traveler. Cool. So
hold on real fast. Before we
please.
get anywhere, in true fashion of anything I've ever tried to do outside,
somebody pulls out a leaf blower.
within 10 minutes, there's a leaf blower.
Yeah.
I've tried to do this my entire life of creating content, and the leaf blower is the #1 ruiner, and they don't stop.
Yeah.
They just give her a break every 30 seconds.
Drag it up again.
Oh, no. Nope, there's a leaf over there.
Is it picked that up pretty good, you think?
We'll find out.
Yeah, we will find out. And then the squirrels that are obviously very angry in the tree right now.
This is ridiculous.
So triathlon for the first time, you jumped in. I just have to ask, though, about the first bike ride. Aside from your package becoming useless to you and feeling insensibility, did you have any, like, oh, man, this is, like, a really hard thing? Or were you pretty darn fit? You didn't struggle, like, keeping on wheels or any of that?
I don't remember. I remember being out there and like, all right, I can keep up or I can go hard. And then I got passed maybe by one person at the end.
Yeah.
And I think I had been kiteboarding and I'd have to drive and get set up. And it was because I was living in Fort Walton Beach area where I could kiteboard every day out any direction for any wind within like I lived on the beach.
Yeah.
And so then I moved to Tampa and I had to drive like 15, 20 minutes, pack my gear. So it wasn't as accessible, and I found something that I could do all the time, every day on my schedule, check that box, get the endorphin rush. And so that's why I took on to this sport, because it was just a daily self-indulgent satisfaction. I made myself better so I can make everything else exist in my world.
Yeah. Has your relationship changed with the sport throughout that journey from the beginning to where we are now?
I think I have totally immersed myself into this sport, the culture, the types of personalities. I think I've been living this sport every single day since probably those first few years. I don't know. I think if anything, I understand like the giant ecosystem, why we do it, like the psychology, the physical gains, the lifestyle benefits. To me, it's not just a sport. It's not just what I want to go do as a race. It's like it's a life journey that hits reset every time you get a new chance to race somewhere cool or figure out something to work on. It's a never-ending growth opportunity in this sport.
Yeah. So, as you have grown in this sport, you obviously haven't always been doing RTS. You've had your share of experiences where you got to experience other teams, what they were about, what they were not about. You figure out what you liked, what you didn't like. Tell me, or tell us, I guess, about the journey of all these experiences and then how that had led to the eventual creation of RTS and how that's guided that vision.
Yeah, that was, I guess, bred out of necessity. Those squirrels,
Dude, I'm telling you,
they were fine earlier.
I'm telling you, dude, you record outside. It's
You
like,
go outside to try to do some business, and you can't have any silence. So I was on the PVAG racing team, PEWAG. They had like Marino van Honacker, Firesal Sultan, some other bigger names in the past, but they were an Austrian team, and the manager of that team was coming to St. Petersburg, Florida every winter, and I would always be like, this team seems awesome. Like there's support, there's funding, it's a community, you guys take care of each other. Also, I want to come to Austria. And so I was just begging him. And so eventually I was racing professionally and I was like, I'm going to go to Austria, immerse myself with this team, see what it's all about, and show them that I mean business. I want to be part of this team. I want to help it grow. I want to be the first American athlete. And so I went there. I loved it. I raced Ironman Austria. I wore the race kit. And then they offered me a position that following year, which was so nice. Funding, bikes, swims, like a full ride scholarship. It was nice at such a early part of my career. But I had shown a lot of growth and I was doing well. And so after 1 year, I signed again for another year. And then I kind of like realized it's not as great as I thought it was. Like it really was in terms of the team management side of thing for the athletes, but for the management side of it, it was just really weird. I had signed with the guy who, it was a manager, and he was like also my agent and my coach. And so there was a lot of things going on, and I wouldn't get good communication. He was very like just hard to communicate with. Might have been, I don't know, barriers of communication through Austria to U.S. dialect or something. I mean, he spoke English well enough, but either way, I realized a lot of holes, and that's the biggest thing I've noticed in the whole industry is there's a lot of holes either in representation, people not doing their job adequately, and I just always felt like if I was going to run a team, I could probably do it better than this. If I was going to be a coach, I could do it better than this. And so I think naturally over time, I didn't have a vendetta, I didn't have a purpose to do it, but I just fell into these roles. I was coaching master swimming for a couple of years. I was really proficient at helping people there. Then I started coaching for triathlon as a whole. Then, got all kinds of certifications. My degree and all my stuff was backing up the mental welfare side of things.
the degree was post.
It was
military?
like I was always working on it. It took me like 8 years because I was deployed and I had to change colleges like 3 times because of traveling, and then finished all online stuff. Yeah. It's not easy to finish a degree when you're in the Air Force. So anyone who does it, hats off. Yeah. So after all that was going on, I was like, COVID. We have no connectivity. We don't get to see our buddies anymore. Me, Jackson, and Garrick started the podcast. Then I was like, I know a lot of connections. I know we can get bigger contracts. I know we can represent this sport better. Let's build something. And I think since that happened, I've just been so focused on trying to build this new type of community that the sport, I think, could thrive with.
Yeah, for sure. So what are some of the things you have learned about yourself throughout this, especially starting RTS, like things you are good at, things maybe you're not as good at that you're trying to like find help in other areas?
Yeah, I'm a good startup guy. Like I have a hard time sometimes in the meat of it, and sometimes I'm a good finisher. So I really love the startup process of building relationships, generating new opportunities. I love the chase of new partnerships and giving them what they need and building this organization to provide them something they need. I love that part. But then, I want to hand off the maintenance of it on the budgeting, all the, so that's what we're doing now is like we've got people to help with an RTS to make sure that we're fulfilling everything, and I can just keep trying to flourish in these new relationships. So that's what I'm good at. What I'm bad at is probably overgeneralizing what I am doing at any given time to where I'm not really exceptional at one thing. That's kind of been what I've always been like. I've been really...
Jack of all trades, master of
been
some.
really good at things until I start taking them too seriously. And then I kind of try too hard and then I make it kind of crappy. Like with pool or darts. When you really, when I've had a couple beers and just throwing darts, I'm real good at darts. When I'm playing pool and I'm just having fun, I'm real good at pool. But once the stakes are high and I'm really focused and I'm second guessing, I screw it up. So if I go off my gut, if I just go with the flow, I do way better. So I've learned that about myself.
So how has that worked as being a professional in the sport?
It's been ebbs and flows. Like I was on a really good upswing until probably after COVID. I changed my lifestyle with a new relationship, left a marriage behind, started integrating with kids. I've had 2 coaches since then, tried new training protocols. And now I think that those were all lessons learned, all things that I can now take in as a coach, as a mentor to others to help them understand why or what or how.
Yeah.
So it didn't help my career as much. It took a lot of my charisma away from being a competitor, but I think I still have a couple more years, at least at full distance, to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to share 2 things that you've said to me over the course of this weekend that have been impactful, and then I'm going to ask a question. It's kind of a follow-up to those. So first of all, you said when we were on a bike ride not too long ago, because I was inquiring from your perspective, what are maybe some of my weaknesses or how I go about just attacking life and doing things, and you said something that hit home for me, which was that you have noticed that I can tend to devalue something because after I kind of dive into it, I can realize that it doesn't hold maybe necessarily the standard or level of organization that I would like, so then I can kind of devalue it, and I tend to write it off, which I would say is true, even though that stung a little bit. So that was pretty introspective, good piece of information. And then the second thing was you said, I was just sharing a little bit of something, like a mental struggle that I had, and you said like, oh yeah, when something like that comes up, that you recognize the trigger and you have a protocol in place and then you execute that protocol more or less. So those are pretty introspective things. I would say the protocol thing maybe comes from the military background. But I guess my question for you is, when you come upon those types of hard or difficult things and you recognize those triggers, are the protocols things that you have already developed in the past that do you actually write these down, or you just take a mental note of like, okay, this is what I'm going to do, boom, 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 and then you execute it? Like how did you come about, I guess, these being able to do that?
I think generally, because I think it's a general question about how I process and handle stress or conflicts, right?
Yeah.
I think over time and having enough experiences, and I think that's the biggest thing that's given me this gut instinct, and I think I listen to my gut more than anything, and I kind of just take things as they are at the moment I see them, and I just quickly do a logical assessment, and I take the emotion out of it, which is probably something that is hard for most everyone to do, but for me, the emotional compartmentalization versus the logic, there's always like a couple of paths, and so maybe I'll bring the emotion in later. But I think for me, learning those tasks, it's been because of stress management through the military, just being thrown into every type of situation, like whether it was Hurricane Katrina and then spending a whole month doing humanitarian service, walking 8 miles a day, saving people's lives, pulling, whatever it is, or going to Iraq and having to deal with separation anxiety to the most, like I was crying on the first 4 hours of our flight, just felt so lost and alone. Like I've always been in positions, and I've put myself in positions instinctively, not thinking about the causes or what's going to happen, but then really organically feeling them and having to work through the suck of it. So I think I've never been afraid of the hard work that it's going to take to get through something that sucks. I don't think about how I feel about it, and I just get it done. So I think that's how I can identify the trigger to be like, well, I know I feel this way because I've made a decision about how I should be feeling, and sometimes you have to throw that away. Same thing with, like, I bike the same routes and they get mundane and they get lame, but then one time I did like a mushroom trip, and then I was like, these routes are awesome. Like, I can't believe I was so like focused on one aspect of this thing that was holding me back from having a great time every time.
Yeah.
And so it just takes some rewiring and being aware. Like, I have always had a high level of awareness of how I'm impacting others, or how my driving is impacting you, or how my wandering around and causing you problems in a line. Like, those little things I just pay attention to. So maybe that helps.
Where does the level of self-awareness that you have, how have you garnered it over time? Is it something that you've noticed that has just come upon you naturally, part of nature? Like, have you ever thought about that?
I don't know, honestly, where that comes from. It might be because I think maybe from a core thing is I don't ever want to be perceived as something that I'm not, even though that probably happens all the time. But I really try to focus on being authentic and just myself. And I think that is something I fear. I don't want to be perceived as something that I'm not, or not be reliable, not uphold my word. And so I think that's why I'm always aware of, like, did I tell somebody I was going to do that? Like, if I say I'm going to do something and be somewhere or grow something, like that, there's a lot of responsibility within the RTS ecosystem.
Sure.
I've told these athletes I'm going to pay them every quarter this rough estimate of cash that I've had to earn based off their merit in this team. And so I have to come complete on that. If I mess that up, like, credibility's gone. So I think those levels of pressures and have always just kept me honest.
Yeah. Have you ever come to a place where it was hard to make those payments?
It's always hard to make those payments because I have to plan invoices based off of bonuses, based off of like a big overall budget that I've planned for the year. But then also I have to pay for this, this, and this. And how do we generate our own income as a team? Because we're not like a funded team by one entity like most all teams are. And so,
Like one primary source?
yeah,
of
we
funding?
don't have like an agenda. We're not like, for example, when Timex was like a watch company, or BMC, like they're a bike company. We are a group of pro athletes who are representing the collective community we're creating. And so I think that in itself is hard to generate income off of, but I'm certainly not opposed to figuring out how.
Yeah, for sure. So in the landscape of professional teams, they're starting to pop up a little bit more. And I think RTS stands for something obviously unique with the vision that you've been casting. How does that make you feel when you see more of them pop up? Like, do you see that as a source of competition? Do you see that as, oh, that's good for the sport? I'm sure it's a little mixed feelings, but...
It is mixed. I think deep down, it's easy to be critical of things you don't fully understand, and that's the usual first thing you do. If you don't understand, you fear or you criticize or you just downplay, their shit smells different than mine. But I think I do get to know the people who are running these teams. I do know a lot of people in the sport, and I think it makes me feel good to know that maybe other people find value in having a team organization that they can stand for something bigger than themselves. And I think at the cause, that's why I want this sport to be so impactful. Yeah. So I love it, as long as they're not trying to take my people or my deals. No, I'm just kidding. I think there's plenty of business and plenty of space for everybody. Yeah. And I really like that there's different personalities being represented amongst these teams. Because before, even when I was in the PVAG racing team, like, you don't have a personality, an identity. You are that green tri-suit. That's it.
Yeah,
but I want,
like pro cycling.
Yeah, I want my athletes to have an identity on the RTS pro side.
Yeah. Do you think it could ever be hard to manage once you get, like, if you were to have 30 athletes, would that be?
It's hard to manage as is, not because of the people, because of the personalities that you want to make sure are included and felt taken care of. The one thing that I know as a team owner, manager is, and this is what I want to do better at, is if you make people feel good about what they're doing, ask them how they are, be very human, get into the weeds on psychological issues, provide some TLC for maintenance and massage, like what a cycling team does. Like, triathletes will love you.
Yeah.
That's what that's what the feed's doing. They're not doing anything different besides sending videographers, giving a really curated experience for those who are working for them, and that's what I want to create. Once I get more funding.
Yeah. So, a pretty serious question.
Bring it.
Tell me about your tattoo on your arm and all of your tattoos, and what were the inspirations?
Oh yeah, they're not
behind
very good stories, but this first one right here is I was 18. I was in Florida with my girlfriend. We just got. I had a weird girlfriend experience. I was like,
Please tell.
I was basically living with my girlfriend, who I think was 16, and I was 17, almost 18.
Okay, so almost
Living,
robbing the
like,
cradle.
yeah, sleeping in the same bed. Parents were over there. Like it. I don't think I've
the parents were at the house.
Yeah, like I like lived with them a little bit, and it was so weird looking back. Like I would have never let my kids do this at all, but I was like, oh, I'll meet at my girlfriend's house. Anyways, so her and I went together to West Palm Beach for like a weekend. The weather was awful, and I just was 18. I was like, I feel like I need to get a tattoo. I've always wanted to get one on the inner arm because you can't really see it, and once you do see it, you're like, oh, that guy's a little edgy. So I did that one, and then this one I drew when I was in high school. It's just a dragon, and I don't.
Oh, you drew it?
Yeah, and it wasn't. I mean, it was based off of something I'd seen, so I just kind of replicated it, and so I was like, let's get that on the other arm. Not
The sun and the dragon. Was it just like, oh, these look cool?
Yeah, they have no meaning.
Yeah, we should cut and come up with like a really deep philosophical meaning.
No, I say this. My friends call me Dragon.
Yeah.
But
Those are your only two tattoos?
I have an Air Force tattoo right here,
Okay.
just because I was proud to be
In the Air Force.
going into the Air Force, so I got it before I made it through basic training.
Really?
Yeah, I did.
That's hilarious. You
It's-
showed up and did your
Oh, they ripped on me there. Oh,
what are you, maggot?
you think you're gonna make it already? Oh, this guy's already in the Air Force. Oh man, it was so bad.
Yeah, that's
I don't know
hilarious. And
why.
You couldn't have put it on a more...
Yeah,
Like,
recognizable
in-your-face
spot.
place.
But the only time anyone saw it was when we all had to take showers, which wasn't too.
There were other things distracting.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah.
You're just trying to keep your eyes up because you're like everyone's butt naked. And my drill sergeant came in, or our TI came in, with like a waterproof thing on his cap. Walks in there butt naked with his cap. Like, what are you boys doing here? You better get on it.
You know they had a good time. I've
Yeah.
heard some stories from, yeah.
I would have been doing the same things as a TI.
Yeah. That just totally distracted my thinking. I forgot what I was going to ask.
Thought
It was
about
like a
some naked
question.
boys in the shower?
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, what was it? I can't even remember now.
Well, we were talking about military. We're talking about
Getting tatted.
oh yeah, meanings in my tattoos.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's nothing. The only meaning, the tattoo that I want to get next still doesn't have any meaning, like deep down, not like a birthday or something, but I've always wanted to get like a cool lightning bolt up on
On your
my
quad?
thigh, like
Okay.
almost upper IT band, just so when I'm running and my split shorts just kind of like flow, you can see the lightning bolt.
It's all so other people see it and like, oh, here comes
You're like, oh
lightning
man, that
leg.
guy's the guy with the lightning bolt on the thigh you can barely see.
You could probably brand that.
I've always wanted that. I think one of our other coaches, Cheyenne McGregor's, she's going to get a lightning bolt too.
Oh,
I was like, because she had like a shirt on. I was like, I always wanted that tattooed. She's like, I was thinking about getting a lightning bolt
oh,
tattoo.
that's
I
so
was like,
funny. It could be a RTS initiation.
ooh yeah, everyone's got to get a tattoo of
A
a
lightning bolt on the upper thigh. Yeah.
That's why with the fist bump logo on the back of this shirt, we've got some lightning coming up
Yeah.
top.
That's so funny. So earlier you were talking about your mom, 7-hour drive,
Yeah,
and you guys would butt heads over politics and religion.
yeah.
Tell me politics. What is your take on the political climate, and then what are you and your mom going at it about?
Well, my mom and I have never been very good to hang out with for more than like a day or two, just because.
That's why I decided to hang out with you for a week.
No, yeah. I mean, you're fine. My mom, we just clash our personalities. The second that I criticize anything, she just blows up like I just beat her. So if you have an opinion different than hers, there's no discussion. There's no like, hey,
That's how it is. I'm the parent.
it's just like, you're so mean. Like, it's just tough to have a conversation with my mom about anything she's doesn't fervently believe in. She's like, in my opinion, she's the problem with our political system because she blames Democrats for the same things that the opposition is blaming her. And they're both so blame heavy and pointing and they're ruining this. Like, that's why it's so bad.
Yeah.
She-
Nobody takes ownership.
Yeah, she is somebody who just eats up all the low-hanging X Twitter stuff, or like she's thinks that she's not a mainstream news follower, but she is like a conspiracy news follower, which some of it's true, I'm sure. But either way, it's hard to talk about. And then the religious thing too is like now she's back into finding, her place with God and everything like that. And I don't challenge. I just have questions. I'm like, well, what about this? And then I'm lighting a fire and basically blowing up the house.
Really?
So that's why I don't discuss that with my mom.
Yeah. So politics, what's your take on everything going on?
I'm sure that both political parties are owned by one massive amount of people who have all the money, and they're just like fear,
chaos,
keep people fearful, keep them under wraps, keep the thumb on them.
Yeah.
I feel like we're just manipulated every day of our lives and taxed on top of taxed, and we are allowed to have these freedoms, which is great, but I think there's an extreme price to be paid somewhere, and it's scary because it's like, what's the next crisis that's going to bring us together?
Yeah.
That seems to be the only COVID, 9/11, real estate stuff, like anything that sucks and is terrible, everyone bands together.
Yeah. Yeah, you have a quote.
Oh yeah, crisis. Oh, I don't remember.
Crisis precipitates change.
Crisis precipitates change.
And I think that can work in both directions for good change and bad change.
Absolutely.
So what would it take for you to precipitate change in your life where you'd say, I think I'm going to go live in the woods, or I think I might try to jump ship off this amazing country?
I'll do that tomorrow.
Yeah?
I'll go take my family and we'll go live in Scandinavia, way in the mountains, and I'll learn how to chop wood and create some winter wonderland.
Some winter wonderland. Do you think that if we were to, if thing hits the fan right now, me and you are stranded together, we got to go live in the woods, could you survive?
Yeah. I think I've
find some food.
done enough survival stuff to know that I could make it happen. I don't know if it'd be pretty. We'd probably be hungry for a while.
Yeah, there's plenty of deer. Plenty of dogs, cats.
I've watched about 8 seasons of Alone.
Yes, so you know how to get there. So what would be the first steps? What would we do?
Oh man, first we have to make sure our shelter is secure. We'd have to build up, because other people are going to want this.
Yeah.
You got to protect what you have first, whether it's through physical means, traps, holes, moats.
Well, we got 3/4 of a moat.
Yeah,
here.
so we got to figure out how to protect what we have. Then we have to secure a source of food and water immediately. Usually the water part's, we got a lake here, so that's fine.
Yeah, we can drink that.
Boil
I mean,
it.
you might die because of your sinus situation.
I'm fine today. My sinuses are fine. I think it was Michigan that messed me up.
Okay.
So once you get the hunting, trapping, foraging, which ones are going to yield the best, we'll probably fish a lot, probably smoke it, dry it. We'll do some growth opportunity with some tomatoes, some greens in the summer.
Turn this into like a
I really think we could do it. We'd probably have to buy some livestock and start creating some chickens at least.
Oh yeah, get some eggs.
Get some chickens, and I think that's probably about it. I don't need to have any big animals, but some small ones. So that's it, man. We're good.
Yeah.
We need weapons though.
Yeah, I was going to ask, where are you going to get, because you said hold down the fort and protect, like what do you...
We'll have to figure out a way to barter our way into some weapons, or we'll go drive up to Michigan and get some stuff and bring it back.
I feel like if things hit the fan, ammunition and food would be the most expensive things immediately.
Toilet paper, that's going to be the biggest thing.
Paper, that's
just
what
like,
it was during
like
COVID.
COVID.
Yeah, that's absolutely insane. Okay, so tell me about the religion side. What has your religious journey been, or spiritual journey over time? Because like you grew up, obviously your mom and dad at the time, it sounds like there was a little bit of upbringing, went to church.
We weren't a very religious family. I mean, my dad was for a while after they separated when I was 12. I was in a church band and played guitar and stuff, and that was fine. I had a great time. It was a good community. And then started seeing a lot of the hypocrisy, and felt like all the churches were doing were just like tithe. We need money. Meanwhile, pastors gold and looking real good. So overall, I think I found my own level of spirituality, whether, it's hard for me to say one thing is possible, one thing is happening, one thing is predetermined.
Yeah.
I think I'm open to most every religious viewpoint as a possibility. And so I think I just feel like I want to take care of people, take care of loved ones, and the religious aspect of it isn't something that detracts from anything. I think if anything, it just adds value. And I love that it builds a community, sets some morals fibers, but the whole history of religion just kind of gets a little bit battered.
Yeah, interesting. So what, I mean, I was going to ask what you've learned, but you kind of just told me what you've learned, so that question doesn't really hold much weight anymore.
I've learned a lot.
Yeah?
Yeah, I've learned that everything's possible. Anything, you should be open to most anything. I mean, why do we have to be so convicted to say that we know based off of just a feeling? Like, feelings can be misinterpreted.
Convictions can be misinterpreted.
Exactly. Like, anything's possible. Like, why do we feel like we have to know everything is my main concern.
So your gut, I'm very similar, and I operate probably 90% of the time off of my gut. Business, I mean, any facet of life. Do you distinguish a difference between gut and conscience?
I think I can tell a difference.
Yeah?
Yeah. Because normally the gut is the first thing I just go with or feel, and then consciously I will, I know this probably, even though the gut instinct is, usually those are more like what? Related to something like a sexual urge. Yeah. Those are things that are more like gut instinct. Yeah, like you want, but then consciously you're like, no, we don't need to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can define those things pretty well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't thought about it in that way. Nice, dude.
That's it?
I don't know. I was going to say, do you have any questions that you'd want to ask me?
No, but that hose in the background, I just want
I know. We've got chainsaw, we got some dude chopping wood, leaf blower, now we got some water.
Dude, just those little things. We can't ever have anybody else support our goals except for us.
Yeah.
Seth, I think like you've invested a lot of your time and energy into this sport through this podcast. Why?
That's a good question. The reason I started the podcast, I've started several podcasts, and they've usually been centered around past businesses. One was like a senior living business where we were creating more or less like a very glorified CRM so that these senior living communities could run all their ads and do everything that they wanted to do themselves. So we had a podcast around that. And I realized, like, I really enjoy interviewing people, but the content was about as dry as you can imagine it would be. Before that, I had one centered around making the hammock company. So I had a company called Sway. We made insulated hammocks, and it was actually a pretty good podcast, but I just wasn't invested into it time-wise. I had a girl who's actually my cousin on my wife's side, in-law, I guess, and she came up with like really good content to talk about, like the history of hammocks and history of fibers, like different types of nylon and stuff like that, where it all came from. So that was really good, but I just really wasn't in it. I think we probably recorded 20 or 30 episodes, and yeah, I think it's like less than 1% make it past, I think, 10. So we did that. But yeah, I got involved in the sport at the time when that Sway company was going bust because of COVID, and I was looking for something else to attach my identity to. And at that point in my life, I hadn't really learned the lesson that what I do doesn't define who I am, or what I'm doing doesn't define who I am. It's more important to figure out, what I figured out was that with what I do, they are reflections of a person of who I am in that moment in time. So as I kind of cut the Sway thing and was trying to figure out what can I do next, I realized that triathlon was something that I wanted to get involved in because I could control it from head to toe. In terms of my own physical ability, in terms of how I was mentally, I only had me to kind of blame or praise for. And so as I started getting into the triathlon, I saw like some quick growth, like in a lot of things in my life. Like when I start something new, I see a lot of really quick growth. And I was looking for something else to sink my teeth into that was a little bit entrepreneurial. And during the Sway days, when I had that company, I got passed around a lot in the Chattanooga entrepreneurial community to a lot of successful people. People who ran Volkswagen, people who were running Coca-Cola and McKee Foods, and just a lot of other companies. And I met a lot of like high-profiled-ish people in that area. But what I really, at the end of the day, ended up doing, instead of asking them like a bunch of like, how do you do this, I just kind of end up asking them their story and having deep conversations, and more often than not, a lot of those conversations ended up being circling around family, religion, politics, or just like deeper topics of conversation. And so when I got into triathlon, I was like, well, I have a lot of these cool, like interesting people that I know now, and I've gotten into the triathlon sport, and I like making new friends. So maybe I could just, try to invite them on a podcast, call it Stupid Questions, so it's not at all
serious.
Yeah, not at all serious, not at all like
Even though you asked some very serious
Yeah,
questions.
I do. So it's kind of a little tongue-in-cheek because I wanted people to feel like, oh, this isn't going to take much effort, and then bring them in and ask them those questions.
Make them cry.
And, yeah, we've had some crying episodes. So I started that, and I've just fallen in love with it, not because it's something that I think will necessarily ever like be what I used to want to have, which is like, I want to be the founder CEO of this company. We're going to have 5,000 employees, and I'm going to change lots of lives. It's really just now giving a platform, I think, for a lot of the different types of individuals, and hopefully portraying the best possible version and the truest version of who they are, like when they are, hopefully feel like they're being listened to. So I think a lot of the social media stuff that we've got going on, like it's good and it has its place, but at the end of the day, I think it's really tough to kind of figure out who that person is behind the camera when you only see them for a few minutes and then they're, laying themselves out to die on a race course. Like, you can learn a lot about an individual in that way, but not into the same depth. So yeah, I'm still trying to figure it out why I'm doing what I'm doing, to be honest. But
I think it's because there's a lot to be learned from every triathlete, I think, on some level, mainly because it's the ultimate sport for anybody who wants to be in total control.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like most people, they go to work, they're stuck in traffic, they're stuck on these hours, they're manipulated by employees, vendors, whatever. There's like a lot of things you can't do anything about in normal life.
Yeah.
But when you identify as a triathlete, you're in charge of your schedule, you're in charge of your well-being, your race schedule, how you feel about it. And I think it just gives us a lot back of the things we've been pulled away from with technology and greed and lust. It brings us back to a lot of things that are core for existence.
Yeah, no, 100%. And every guest that I've ever had on, with the exception now, because we're getting a little bigger, we're starting to get introductions to people like, hey, you should have this person on, and then I'll consider it. But I would say 95% of everyone has been just out of natural curiosity, personal curiosity, which I think affords me, the natural curiosity of sitting down with someone for an hour, hour and a half, and just asking questions about who they are. And man, I'm actually going to be releasing, I wrote a little article, which I need to share with you to see what you think of it.
Ooh.
But I had this kind of, how would I say, if you're saying epiphany? Yeah, but if you're saying it, I had a epiphany moment. I don't know. Yeah, we'll say epiphany moment.
Yeah. You just said you had an epiphany.
I had an epiphany. Episode 91, I was recording with a guy named Nick from Tri-Rig, and he was unlike anyone I'd ever interviewed before in that I felt like, this is going to sound a little egotistical, but I felt like he understood exactly what I was thinking, what I was going for before I even got there. So I had to really be like up a notch. Yeah. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And actually it made me sweat a few times because I was like, oh my goodness, like, how am I going to do that? So I had to really focus on, Seth, just listen. The questions will come, because that can be difficult at times.
Yes.
But I had this epiphany moment where episode 91, I realized some internal things, like what I have, in the way that I ask questions and the things that I'm trying to learn about others. I think I've really been trying to learn something about myself.
I think so too.
Yeah. Please, dude, tell more.
I think that's why we all want to ask questions, so we can learn from others about how to be better to ourselves. Like that's the ultimate human connection. So your exploration for all these, because I see all the guests and interviews, and I'm like, oh, I know them, and these are all great candidates to be on a show. Yeah. Because they all have a unique, cool story, viewpoint, and opinion that you can learn from, and then be like, what do I stand for?
Yeah.
And so I think we should always be redefining ourselves.
Yeah.
We should always be taking somebody else's perspective and thinking for 1 second, even if I don't agree with it, what if I was faced with those same circumstances? Because I think that's the biggest problem we have with social media is we just make immediate judgment, move on. Judgment, move on. We don't really absorb or humanize these things anymore. We just constantly pound the judgment on everybody.
Yeah.
swipe. It's instantaneous.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so what you're doing is connecting.
Yeah, for sure, and it's a good thing. I think for hopefully everybody who does get to listen. But yeah, as I've asked a lot of these questions too, I found myself. Lost my train of thought again. I had something so good to say.
It's because you weren't being present.
I know I wasn't being present.
Well, ultimately, I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, please tell me.
No, I don't.
Okay.
But it's probably more or less around the journey, the experience, you learning, you opening, and figuring out again why you are who you are, and making sense of the tragedies or greatnesses that have happened in your life.
Yeah. What I was going to say too, circled around that, is exactly what you said, but with just a little bit more detail. I realized around 17, 18, I went out to Arizona for this pitch competition. So a part of my life for like a year and a half is I was traveling literally all over the world doing these pitch competitions. Went to like Berlin and Germany and won one, and it wasn't super huge, but I did another one in Arizona, I did one in Chattanooga and won, or got second in. But as I was doing all of these jump arounds, I realized in myself that I totally forgot it again. This is unbelievable. I had it twice.
I thought you had a podcast.
I know. It was like, this is the most embarrassing thing ever. What was it? It had to do with me figuring out why I was asking. Oh, yes. Opinions. So anyone who I had any value in.
Yeah.
If they would say something that was contrary to my own internal belief, I would almost like in public, in the setting with them, agree with them. And one of my close mentors at the time, I was spending a time with a lot of these people at these pinch competitions, and they were pretty successful people, and they were quite a few years older than me, so there was that dynamic. But they would have an opinion, I would say something, and then they would say something back, and I would like immediately change to kind of agree with the group. And they kind of laughed at me one time, one of the guys who I really looked up to, and he's like, Seth, like, you need to hold your opinion a little bit more tightly. And I was like, oh man, ouch. But yeah, like, he's probably totally right. So I realized that I needed to figure out internally, what do I believe? What am I unwilling to give up and change?
Yeah.
What am I willing to give up and change? And I'm still trying to figure that out, because in a pretty intense, more than most, like religious Christian upbringing with a very distinct and defined set of values and beliefs, like I had to go through figuring out what I believe and why I believe, but I'm still trying to figure out which of those beliefs I am unwilling to waver on, because it's so interesting. There's so many different values or beliefs or truths that an individual can hold dear, that if you talk to two different people on the same day in two different areas, if they have an argument that sounds just as appealing, your decision to believe or not to believe in whatever it is could change like that. And so, does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. So I'm like trying to figure out, like, as I go through life, like, when is that appropriate? So I, as a religious person, I pray a lot for like discernment. Like, I want, like, God, give me discernment to know when or when not to let something go. Because I don't have a problem typically changing my belief or changing my opinion on something. But the other side of that is like I get very intense on, like, I want you to prove it to me. And if it doesn't make, like you said earlier, if it doesn't make sense to me, or if I don't understand it, then I'm quick
to move on.
Yeah, quick to move on and brush it off.
Maybe you should be a pastor.
No.
Maybe you should be a figure in church who can help others find their purpose and meaning.
No.
Just as you have.
Yeah.
You can flourish.
No. I have a real problem with not pastors in general, but pastoring, because a lot of the people who listen to pastors or even any leaders, is as soon as that person does something that they don't agree with, like if they've been following them for a while, they'll like immediately wipe away their entire existence and say, oh, I give up this religion because that guy did this bad thing, or I did
that's
this.
That's why I don't want to coach pro athletes.
Yeah.
Because it's like so cliquey and like, oh, everyone's on there. Oh, one person leaves. Oh, we're all gone.
Yeah.
It's just so like hot or cold, like fundamentals.
Yeah, fundamentals.
All right.
Yeah, cool. Well, hey, thanks for
being on my show.
Yeah, thanks for being on my show. We're going to release it, I guess, at both places, right? Is that the plan?
Why not?
We have to say it now. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Send it out there. So, yeah, if you enjoyed this conversation, like, comment, subscribe, review. Go check out the RTS Podcast.
Yeah, we'll be on there.
And everything that RTS has to offer. please review the Stupid Questions podcast. I have to say that. I need to get better about asking that at the beginning of videos, actually.
Yeah.
So please go do that.
Send a review. Send a statement of intent.
A statement of intent.
Yeah. I intend to listen to every episode.
Comment, everyone.
Yeah, and tithe
Yeah.
to
And
Stupid
tithe.
Questions.
I do have actually one more question. You mentioned tithing. Tell me the concept of what tithing meant to you in that context. Was it a percentage and then there was an offering on top of tithe?
There's always an offering. But
Yeah.
yeah, tithing's like you pay your whatever percent to the church to be part of the church, to support the church.
Yeah.
And then they ask for more in the offering.
Yeah, and they play the nice slow
Yeah, and they're
music
like,
and
we're trying to build this new wing, and
Yeah.
man, we need about 10 grand. We're almost there.
Yeah.
We're almost there, folks. We need,
fundraising is always
just,
interesting.
we're passing it around. No obligation. But we're passing it around. and if someone puts $1 in and you don't, it's okay. No one's judging. We're all just
But we'll just
passing.
hold it there a little longer. Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, cool. All right, awesome. Thanks so much.